Welcome to the Gary and Kenny Show. I'm Gary Kroger, coming to you from America's heartland in Waterloo, Iowa. And I'm joined, as always, with Kenneth Seisler in Calabasas, California, which is America's, what?
Well, Calabasas has gotten a lot of attention. When I first moved out to Calabasas, nobody heard of it. But then the Kardashians came out here, and then Calabasas became famous for the Kardashians. And then people heard about, unfortunately, then Kobe got his helicopter crashed here.
Now, that's why everybody knows Calabasas.
Now everybody knows Calabasas because of that. Yeah.
Right.
So,
has it changed your
lifestyle? And I think Justin Bieber lived here for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you ever see the Kardashians around town? Is there a downtown Calabasas, like little place?
There's
with
an old town Calabasas, which
historic Calabasas.
Historic. It's a building that was just really old.
Right.
That's
all right.
What it is. Yeah. No, I don't know if I've seen I'm not really good at recognizing people. Yeah. Because I don't pay attention. I don't want to know. So yeah, that's
why we're so compatible, Kenneth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of compatible, I'm always looking for some kind of segue, and that's, I think, the best I'm going to get.
Well done.
All right. Well,
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, no, please do.
I'm sorry. We're not taking any questions.
I want to say, when you said, you're not good at recognizing people, so my wife has this talent of recognizing celebrities from behind. So, and I swear to God, it's happened 30 times, and she'll go, see that over there, and it'll be 60 yards away, and she'll say, that is, and it'll be somebody that's famous.
And we'll certainly drill deeper into this in a moment after you're actually introduced. But is it the back of their head? Is it their posterior? Is it?
I don't know what it is, but it's a talent. And unfortunately, and believe me, we've tried it. You can't monetize that talent.
You really can't, can you?
No.
But does she have to explain to people that she recognized them from behind? Like to go, how did you know it was me? And she goes, because of your fat ass.
What'd you say, Brad?
Yes, we run away as soon as she.
Run away.
Yeah, okay, that's my strategy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have met our guest, but I want to say a little something about Brad Hall. I have known William Bradford Hall, for 44 years.
Jesus Christ.
Let that sink in. For
It's nearly half your life, Gary.
Almost half my life.
Really.
Brad and I did theater together in Chicago after Northwestern. We went to Saturday Night Live together. We moved out to Los Angeles, not together necessarily, but over the years, Brad is an executive producer, a showrunner, a writer, a director, and we'll get into those specifics and how it all happened. But please welcome once again, Brad Hall. Brad, it's not like this is your first interview ever, and everybody talks about Julia, and everybody talks blah, 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 blah. Well, obviously, you were going to talk about some of that. Saturday Night Live for both of us was a difficult experience, but there are some stories to tell.
Can I go back? I just want to say something. I think you guys are very familiar with who you are, as opposed to me, who I have no idea who I am. And my point is, I want to fill people in on where you guys came from, which was you had this troupe from Northwestern, right? And they were the Practical Theater Company. And who's in the troupe at this time?
It was Gary, Paul Barras, Reed Branson, and Rush Pearson. Was the first show.
So this is four guys right now.
And then Julia
it's four white guys.
And remember, I was billed
diversity yet. That's for sure.
I was billed as the beardless boy.
You were the first show, Gary. Did all the female.
I did all the women's roles as the beardless boy in the Shakespearean tradition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then the next couple of shows we started to have women in the shows, funny women, one of whom was Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
So I'm gonna ask this question, and if you're not interested now, I'm just out of curiosity. So the troupe, the all male troupe, brings in Julia. She's in the troupe. Were you guys an item at that point, Brad, or were you met her through?
When she first came in, when she did her first practical theater show, that's when I fell for her. So I didn't know her that well. I had been away. I went to England for a year to do plays and be a drama student, that kind of stuff. And when I came back, she was in a show with Paul Barras and Rush Pearson and other practical theater people. Gary knew her already. And because she was a freshman, so I hadn't met her. And then I went and saw her show, and actually Paul and I, in a weird little thing, had a confusion of it. He said, "You've got to see this girl." And then he described her as being this little tiny dark-haired girl, right? So there were two little tiny dark-haired girls in the show. One was tinier, and it wasn't Julia. So after the show, I said, "Yeah, she's good, but this other girl is way better." I got confused. And he said, "Really?" It's like, I don't know, man, because we were trying to put together a cast for that summer for Practical Theater. So then when we straightened that out and I realized that we were both talking about Julia, we said, okay, well, let's get her as soon as we can. And so it took us, I think, 6 or 8 months more, something like that. And then Julia did her first Practical Theater show.
But what happened to the woman who was tinier than Julia?
Yeah.
We're Facebook friends.
No, really? Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
She was good.
Okay.
She was really good. But Julia was particularly special.
Yeah.
Well,
so
now,
when we
go ahead,
moved,
Brad.
we were not, by the time that we moved to New York, we were living together and stuff. And that was a hard time. But we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, looking back on it, it was super hard and we screwed up a lot. But I think that it was like a graduate school for television for me. I mean, we learned how to do television. We certainly.
Is there anything particular, specifically, you can say we screwed up a lot? Is there just in what sense? At what?
No, we didn't know. Well, for one thing, we were hired to do a certain kind of thing that they never really asked us to do. And if we'd been smart, we would have really pushed to do that, but which was a lot of music, kind of a rock and roll thing, and more stylish bits. We did a lot of blackouts and stuff like that in our shows. There's ways to do that in television. We didn't really know how to express it, but here's an example of exactly how we didn't know how to articulate for the people, the powers that be, as it were, who were all about 30. It's not like they were ancient.
Right, yeah.
But they were older than we were. So I think, Gary, I think you might have written this with me and Paul. We wrote a sketch called The Upside Down Smith Family.
Smith Family, yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was it's a family that lives upside down. So you press a button on the control panel and the image flips. And the joke of the sketch was that the floor was what was keeping them in Earth's atmosphere. If they walked outside, they would fly away, right? And Gary played an adolescent kid who wanted desperately to go out and have
outside,
go to school. He wanted to learn to read and he wanted to see music, and his parents said, no, you'll never survive.
It's too dangerous.
And at the end of the sketch, he walks out the door and he flies into outer space, right? So we wrote that sketch and we read it in read through, and it didn't make the show. And so I was like, that was a really funny sketch. It got good reaction in the read through. So I said to the executive producer at the time, hey, what about the Upside Down Smith Family? What happened there? And the director, Davey Wilson, who was a charming, delightful guy, but born in 1925 or something. So he was of a different generation. And so he said, well, you can't do it. Technically, you can't do that sketch. I said, well, wait, I don't know anything about television, but I'm thinking, well, yeah, you can. Because, I remember back at Northwestern, we pressed a button on the control panel and the image flipped 180 degrees. No, there's no ceiling. And I said, ceiling? What is the ceiling floor? There's not supposed to be any ceiling. The joke is...
The floor is the ceiling.
Yeah, and he goes, well, what are they going to walk on? I said, they're walking on the floor. It's the image flipped. And he goes, well, that's not funny. And I said, well, that's the whole point. Never mind, right? So I go to a friend who was writing on Letterman, which was brand new. Second year of Letterman, maybe? And I said, oh, man, I can't believe it. We did this. We had this great idea, the Upside Down Smith Family. He says, hey, do you mind if I steal that? And I was like, sure, what the hell, go ahead. So Letterman does a bit where the band is upside down.
Okay.
And they do like 4 or 5 minutes upside down. It's quite, they don't too long, actually, but it worked great. It was fucking hilarious. Next day, I'm in the office. Davey comes in. He says, you see Letterman last night? And I go, yeah. Like, my point has been proved. He goes, see, it doesn't work. And I said, oh, it's a cultural problem. So, he didn't think it was funny. That's all. It wasn't. So we didn't know how to sort of negotiate that. And if I'd been more confident, probably just purely confident at the time, I could have bullied my way in, but we just didn't know. And also we all felt protective of each other. We were trying to move forward as a group. We didn't want anybody's feelings getting hurt. And that's not the way it works at SNL. It's a much more brutal.
Let me offer a little sidebar there, Brad. And again, it's me admiring you. Brad is a man of tremendous integrity. the truth and things matter a great deal to him. After the first year, I was fired. I didn't have I'd have a good show, a bad show, but I was fired. And Brad,
how'd they do it? Did they bring you into a room and say you're fired?
They don't pick up the phone to say you're hired. But it was very clear that I wasn't coming back. And of course I was heartbroken even at the time. I don't know if you know this, Brad. I had already been asked to deliver the commencement address at my high school.
Oh.
But I found out the day before, or even that day, that I'd been fired. So I'm up in front, follow your dreams.
Oh my God.
No, it was so painful. But Brad goes into Dick Ebersol, and I don't know what you said, but he said, hey, listen, you didn't use Kroger correctly. He's a funny guy. You just, I don't know what you said, but you were, we were family and you went in to fight for me. And so Dick calls me up and says, okay, meet me at Yankee Stadium. And he offered me a contract for the next year. But that was because of you. I'm pretty sure you know that.
No, I know. But I felt like it was totally unfair. I mean, they had not. Well, first of all, Paul was supposed to be on the show. They hadn't put him on the show at all. You and I were supposed to be doing all kinds of stuff.
But now I want to move on from SNL because honestly, Brad, you're so much more than that. But although I do want to point one thing out, because of course I know everything you've ever done, but I went to Wikipedia anyway, right? And so one of the things in your recurring SNL characters, one of them was Mike Phillips, friend of El Dorco, which was one of my characters. Mike Phillips, friend. Anyway.
I didn't know it was Mike Phillips. I didn't remember that.
Yeah. You left after 2 years, and immediately I think you're at Lincoln Center, right?
Yeah, that was followed hard upon, as they say in Shakespeare, yeah.
Can we just go back to Wikipedia for 1 second? Because I went to Wikipedia, and according to your papers on Wikipedia, you did a hell of an impersonation of David Hinckley?
Oh, I did do Hinckley, yeah. Hinckley, maybe in the very first show we ever did.
David Hinckley?
Not a lot of people bother with Hinckley.
No,
you know what else you did?
I don't know anybody who's doing like John Harvey Oswald or whatever.
I specialize in people you don't want to hear from. And I think that those are the people that need to be impersonated.
Okay.
Well, so you did Pete Best, for example, which was a really funny sketch where the neighbors asked him to stop hitting his head against their wall when they had guests over. So they asked him to go to the other wall. Which,
I'm just wondering, could you do a little David Hinckley for us now?
Everybody does Hinckley.
Everybody does. So now Brad, here's a question that I wanted to ask you forever and ever and ever. All right? Forever and ever. Because back in the day when we were doing theater, you were paying for it by doing professional theater. You were at the Candlelight. You were doing Patent Leather Shoes. You're doing Lincoln Center after SNL. You were always an actor's actor to me. You were always first and foremost an actor. Now, I know you've done Parks and Recreation. I see you all the time. And, of course, Curb. Your acting resume is great. But when I ask people about Brad Hall, he's a producer, he's a writer, I don't know that people know what an incredible actor you are.
But, I don't really like, to be honest, TV acting and movie acting, of which I've done a tiny bit. It just isn't as fun as doing plays. And for me, anyway, for some people, just my wife, for example, she loves it and can't be, she can't quit it. But for me, I always liked doing plays. And I got to do it. I hadn't done a play in a decade, more than that. And I did a play summer before last and was like, oh yeah, that's what's fun. It's really fun. So, but of course, it's a difficult thing to just pick up and do. But I think if people would throw roles at me, I probably would have never stopped acting. But I'll tell you what happened. I wrote a movie. This was after Saturday Night Live, long after, a decade after, and early 90s. And I wrote a movie called Real Scary, which I sold. And then somebody wanted to make, and then they said, hey, would you play the lead in the movie, which I hadn't really written for myself at all. But I said, sure, are you kidding? Because I was working as an actor more than as a writer, really, at that point, or as much. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. So off we trundled to Virginia Beach to shoot this movie. And there was one night when we were shooting, this is completely off subject, but we were shooting and all of a sudden there was a horrible noise of a jet going over. So the sound guy goes, no, hang on. We got to stop. And then, okay, it's quiet. Rolled again. Another jet comes in. Hang on. Turns out there was a freaking aircraft carrier that had come in right off the beach every 9 seconds. We had a jet. So it was kind of a difficult night. But so we're shooting, it's going great, and the director's really happy, and they're cutting little scenes and stuff, and we're all everything's looking good. We're about halfway through the schedule, maybe a little more. And then I come to the set one day, and there's literally no one there except me and the director and the other actors. The crew is completely absent. I'm like, what's going on? And they've been keeping it from me, thank goodness. The crew had not been getting paid. They got paid when they first got there, and they weren't getting paid. And the director of photography, finally, it was a great crew, and everybody loved each other, and it was really fun. And so they were but they were not getting paid, so they were horrified. So he took all the film hostage and took it to his hotel room and wouldn't open the door until the whole crew had gotten their, whatever it was, 2 weeks or something. So my agent calls me and says, get out of there. There's a problem. The bond is wrong or something's wrong. So it turned out that, of course, the producers were paying Peter before Paul and everything else. And the movie shuts down. This is maybe 2 months after that. I had dinner with Gary David Goldberg, who at the time was doing Family Ties, and a great guy. And Julia, my wife, had done a pilot for his company, but we didn't know him particularly well. I'd never met him, actually. And I get seated next to Gary, and he goes, hey, so, what are you up to? What are you doing? I tell him that story about how it got screwed up. And Gary says, well, you got to do TV. And I said, no, I did Saturday Night Live. I don't know about TV. I'm not. We kind of had kind of a crappy time. He goes, oh, no. You got to do half-hour TV. It's so great. I'm doing a pilot right now. Why don't you come down at Paramount? Come down and just hang out and see what you think. He's the nicest guy in the world. We totally hit it off. So I'm going to do that, which is not. I usually wouldn't do it. I usually would just. I'm not going to take advantage. He didn't really mean it, whatever. But he seemed genuine. So I go down to Paramount, and he's making a pilot with Carol Kane and Robert Urich. And I watched the run through, but it was funny, but it was a little. The run through was rough for sure. They were shooting the next day. I'd never been around half-hour television. I mean, none of us had. Had you ever done half-hour at that point, Gary? Probably. By then, you probably had.
Maybe guest spot on something.
Yeah.
I'd done hour. I'd been doing Spies.
Right.
Hour.
We didn't know anything about it in front of an audience and all that. So we go back to the writer's room. Gary says, hey, come on. What did you think? Give any ideas? I don't know. So we sit down and he says, so what do you think? And there were 4 or 5 writers there. And I'm like, kind of like, well, I really liked it. But don't you think maybe if you just switch this scene with that scene, I didn't know. And I didn't know if I was supposed to say anything or not. And he says, hey, that's a good idea. And we all kind of talk. Goes, you know what? Let's rewrite this thing. So Bruce Helford, do you know Helfie?
Yeah.
He ran Roseanne for years. And Gary and I and Susan Seeger, who wrote the pilot, we just sit down and we rewrite it that night. And we work basically all night. And it is so much fun. And we order food. It's like, do I have to pay for this? It's free. And it was so great. And the next day, we shot every word that we had written. And then, a week or 2 later, the show got picked up. And he said, hey, why don't you just write this? Are you going back to make that movie? I said, not right now, that's for sure. And he goes, well, why don't you just, write this with me? It's really fun. And then I did 10 years of writing stuff with him, basically.
Wow.
And we just had so much fun. It was so much fun.
Well, I have a question, just going back a little bit. Is just that when you guys were let go, when Saturday Night Live was over, how did you guys feel? Was this like, oh shit, I'm in trouble, let's call the agent or the manager? Or do you go, that's not the way we were operating. I was pissed because we felt it was unfair and that we hadn't gotten our shot. But, I didn't feel like, oh my God, I didn't even think about it. I mean, I started doing plays again.
Yeah, you were back at Practical Theater. I mean,
and I went back to Practical Theater.
No, I was there with Julia one more year.
Oh, yeah,
I was there with Julia one more year. Now, here's a piece of Saturday Night Live history that Saturday Night Live fans who may watch our show probably don't know. After 1985, Billy Crystal and I was on the show, and Julia, et cetera, Marty Short. The show was over. because those guys didn't want to continue, and Dick wasn't going to continue without them. There was talk about it becoming Saturday Night Live, Saturday night's main event wrestling. Joe Piscopo wanted to do the Joe Piscopo show, but the show was over.
Really?
And somewhere in that summer, they coaxed Lorne Michaels into coming back.
That wasn't it.
So let me get this straight. Gary gets fired. Brad walks into the office, gets Gary's job back. Then Brad gets fired. Gary says nothing.
Not true. Not true. Not true. In fact, I remember that not true at all. In fact, I've always carried this burden. Julia went in to talk to Dick Ebersol, saying, "Hey, my husband. I don't know if I don't know the story as well as you do, probably, Brad. But she went in to say, I don't know that I want to continue without my husband. But whatever was worked out, she came in. I went in, and Dick Ebersol said, "Shut up! I don't want to hear what you're saying. Brad's not coming back."
Well, it's a long story, but I was going to come back, but I demanded to get $1 million as a writer, and they weren't going to do that. So
they weren't going to do it
because we weren't getting paid as writers, and so I made a list of the 15 sketches that I remember that year, and I said, "Well, here's 15 sketches that you got for free. So how many going to get this year?" He goes, "None, because you're not coming back." I'm like, "Well, hang on a second. You were paying me $1 million."
Yeah, it was a non-negotiable, and I was afraid of not being on the air, let alone walking out on
one thing that we don't need to go into the exact story, but one thing I have in common with Larry David is that he and I both had differences with But look, I got nothing bad to say about Dick Ebersol now. I know how hard his job is. Yeah. I know how he wasn't.
Well, I want to go through the fact that you do Brooklyn Bridge, and of course, then Single Guy was soon after that, where you were showrunner of the show. You created Single Guy. Watching Ellie came a little bit after that, and you directed a lot of Watching Ellie, didn't you?
Did I?
See, you can't even remember.
No, well,
I can list everything on my resume, Brad.
I don't look backward, Gary, as you know, but I really don't. I don't remember stuff particularly well. But here's the thing about showrunning: when you're showrunning, you don't need to direct. It's
right.
Well, can I bring up directing? Because that's my background too.
Yeah, that is your thing, isn't it?
Yes. Very different world now, as far as becoming a director in any situation. I don't know if it's kind of broad. There's nothing specific on
I think that's really true. And I think that, the main thing about being a director, I think in television, there's a lot of different kind of directors. If you're directing in the theater, really you put yourself in the shoes of the actor. If you're directing in television, I think that you put yourself in the head of the showrunner. That's and because you're fulfilling you're fulfilling what's already been created. So you come in to shoot whatever. The look is already created. It's just as you say. The look has already been created. The actors know the roles, or they've created the roles, and your job then is to direct traffic, to have a happy set, to maybe bring performances out of people that they've never done before. But primarily, it's to fulfill the wishes of the showrunner, which is a really hard job. And directors are incredibly important. You can get in the way, and I think you can make more mistakes. You're more likely to make mistakes than you are to elevate. And so I think that's when cast members and stuff direct, if they're not really directors, they can really screw stuff up. I mean, it can really be bad, even though you're getting all the coverage. And generally speaking, on a TV show, it's the way the show is shot is so established. Unless you're shooting a pilot, then you have to establish it. Mm-hmm. But once it's been established, like on Veep, for example, which I directed a lot, there were 4 cameras most of the time, but that is in practical sets most of the time toward the end, or on really fancy, beautiful sets for the White House or whatever. So there's a high end of technical proficiency. Every designer is spectacular. Every actor is unbelievably good at what they do. Yeah. Every costume is perfect. If you walk in there and screw that up,
how much is improvisation in Veep?
Huge. Well, depends on the scene, but a lot. I mean, it's a lot. And some actors were better at that and more comfortable with that than others. But at the beginning, before the Dave Mandel era, back in the Armando era, it was all improvised, pretty much. That is so much so that they were improvising stories, and that's really hard.
And what do you do as far as one more question, Gary, about directing? But what do you do as far as when you have improvisation, and you've got coverage, you've got 4 cameras, and for whatever reason, one of the cameras is just not there at that moment when that character's there? Do you say, well, let's go again on improvisation? Are they trying to hit the same notes, and how many times will you do it? Or
that's a really, really good question, and that's when the director has to make a call or establish a way that you're doing it. I mean, typically, what you want to do, and this doesn't always happen this way, but with Veep, which I think is a perfect way to use improvisation. If you have the time, and if you have the pages, you rehearse and improvise while you're rehearsing. That's the best time for improvisation. You find new things. A lot of that stuff will find its way into the script. That's fantastic. Well, guess what happens if you're 2-3 shows into a season? There aren't any pages. You're not going to rehearse at all. You may rehearse on the set if you're lucky. So a lot of times with Veep, and I'm not talking out of school, I wouldn't know what the story was the whole week I'm prepping. So it's like, I don't even know where the sets are going to be. There is no prep.
Scared. I would be scared to death.
I'm scared now.
You can squeeze it
I have anxiety over this.
I have dreams like that as a director walking on a set and not having anybody tell me where the script is. I just want the script. Can somebody just give me the script?
With Veep that I directed, there's a scene when Julia's TV daughter comes out and says that she's in love with Clea Duvall.
And you directed that episode.
Yeah. But that
Secret Service, right?
We knew what, Secret Service agent. So we knew what the scene was, and that had been in the outline. Hilarious idea, obviously. And, Dave Mandel has really, really worked out the show well. But what was going to happen was really well worked out. It's just the actual pages that would get behind. So sometimes you get an outline, like on that show. We had a pretty strong outline, so I knew what that scene was going to be, but there weren't any pages. We couldn't rehearse. And we were on the set, and there weren't any pages. So we're, try to stay calm. I'm like, there's nothing. Finally, the pages come. We realize it's not stageable. The people come in through the wrong way. It was written too fast. Had good jokes, great stuff in it, but from a pure physical standpoint, you couldn't do it. You couldn't shoot it because it wasn't physically possible. The wrong people would talk when they hadn't made an entrance yet. Right? So we had to straighten that out. And then, the time's going and you're dying and there's 150 people in the crew. It's like, holy shit, we got to get this right. And then you realize you fall back on what you've been doing for 1,000 years, which is just talking to actors and making stuff up and having a good time. And so once with that show, the joy is it's already a successful show. Everybody knows how funny the people in it are. Everybody's easy to work with, so you can relax, or you have to make yourself relax.
Right. And
then funny stuff happens, And sometimes funny stuff happens under pressure, but I find that it's much more likely to happen if you're happy. So that scene worked out to be and in fact, when I staged it, realized it wasn't going to work. The problem with what you're talking about with improvising on camera in Veep is the whole style of Veep, and I was really vigilant about this, is you never swing to the person for the joke. You have to swing after the joke starts, because what motivates the camera move? The way that show works.
It's reacting. The camera's reacting to the material.
You're a fly on the wall watching the show. So
what a great note.
So you can't get there too early or it won't work. So
wow.
So if you're improvising, guess what? These cameramen were so good. One guy in particular, all of them were good, but there was one guy who was just unbelievable. So you make sure, okay, he's going to be the guy that's going to be on this person that's going to get that shot. And then sure enough, in an improv, he'd hear it. And wham, he'd get there right after the joke would start.
I just remembered something. After you guys left SNL, I was at MTV as vice president, and I auditioned Julia for a VJ position.
Really?
Yeah. I just remembered that.
Really?
Yeah, she didn't want the job at all. She hated it. She came in. I remember
She didn't even tell her husband.
She threw the bag on the table. We had a brief interview, and she was just not.
Well,
how funny. Well, I hope she was.
Yeah, no, it was a great choice that she didn't. She wasn't.
Speaking of Julia, you guys work together so much, and here you're directing her on Veep. We know she's one of the great improvisers, and talking about the context that you were talking about. Is it really easy for you because it's your wife, or is there a different, you know what I'm saying? Is there a different persona?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. I work with her all the time, you know, she's just really easy. And the thing about Julia is she's a worker. She's a worker bee. You know, nobody works harder than Julia. She just really likes to work. And so she is constantly working. And part of that is being really forgiving of other actors and really supportive of other actors. And it's impressive, you know, to see she really likes the work. And I think that's why she doesn't have a lot of sort of the trappings of being a TV star. You would never know she's a TV star when you're on the set with her, because that's not how she operates. She just likes to work. So she comes to every scene when she's not in it. She's always on the set because she knows that she's going to learn something from somebody. And particularly on Veep, you know, I think on Seinfeld, for all those years on Seinfeld, she was battling with Larry and Jerry to get more material, because their natural inclination was not to write female stories. And so she would have to really get in there, and, you know, they're delightful, closest friends ever people, and she loved every second of the show, but she wanted to do more all the time. And I think that when they finally opened up to the idea of that, I don't know what season, you could probably, if you knew Seinfeld well, you could probably point to the moment. That's when that show became 4 stories, you know?
Right.
And it's very Breckman-esque.
Probably season 3.
You guys had Breckman on the show, but Larry had something very closely in common with Breckman. Breckman is so good, the best I've ever read, at making a sketch be about 3 things, and then at the end, they collide. Remember how, Larry's Corner was the perfect.
Larry's Corner, right. The luckiest man in the world.
Luckiest man in the world.
Safe falls on it.
Perfect. Those are perfect sketches. And that Larry's Corner laugh is the biggest laugh I've ever heard in the studio.
The milk. We talked about it. We talked about the milk through the nose.
And it was Andy doing the milk.
Right.
But Larry has the same thing. He's got this skill of 4 stories, separate stories, told really quickly in a million different scenes. And then at the end, boom, they come together.
Yeah, it's great.
And he figured that out, not at the beginning. If you watch the first couple seasons, they didn't really work like that.
It's certainly not the pilot, which wasn't even a pilot, really. No relation at all.
It takes years. But once he got that, and I think that's, you know, so in that time, over those years of trying to get more material and stuff, she's the greatest prop actor that ever lived. There's never been a better eater on screen. She can come into a scene and eat a candy bar or a bowl of cereal or whatever and really eat. You know, a lot of people can do that. And you know what I mean, Gary. It seems like that would be an easy thing to do. It's not.
No, it's not at all.
On camera, you're thinking, I'm eating.
Right, you know? Right. I'm self-conscious now, just drinking from this mug in a podcast.
Yeah, look, that's very believable, Gary.
Okay.
Hey, Brad. You wrote and directed Picture Paris, a short film with your wife, which was fantastic. Saw it on Amazon, and I had heard that you were developing that with Meg Ryan for a TV series, but I never heard what happened.
Well, we did, and what happened was it was great, and then it was gone. So that's typical.
Oh, that sounds like Hollywood.
Yeah,
we learned that at SNL. We learned that with the Upside Down family.
We were going to shoot it at Epix. And Epix changed management, and they wiped out their development slate, and that, you know, it's as simple as that. It's a crazy thing, isn't it? Because this was something that we sold 4 or 5 different places and had a bidding war for and everything, and then all of a sudden it was gone. You know, so that one has to just take those things, and you know. Well,
and your wife is in the original. She's so fantastic. I learned to say merci. Merci.
No, she's great in that, and we made that right before Nicole Holocenter did Enough Said with Jules and with James Gandolfini, and she saw Picture Paris because she had never seen Julia do serious stuff, and Picture Paris is a comedy, but there's some very touching,
very touching.
And so Nicole sort of was like, oh my God, she's great. So I'm
Well,
glad.
obviously, we could talk forever about everything you do. And again, I keep saying this, but when I have lunch with you, you're going here, you're coming from there, you've got a meeting, you just blah, 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 blah. But I do know that you have basically, Brad, culled some of what you've learned in this journey, if you will, that you give to students. I mean, you have two fantastic boys who are both doing well, but I know that you teach at USC and have gone back to Northwestern. Give us some of the Brad Hall wisdom.
Well, this is really just if you're talking about what I think you're talking about, this is really, it comes mostly out of parenting, to tell you the truth. And you've got sons, so you know when it's all about how do you
manage
control. What do you really
keep them from dying? Yeah, right.
Like when your kids are little, let's think of it as a parenting thing, but this works as in life. So when your kids are little, it's like you're a sports franchise, right? You're the owner because you've got this little baby, and the baby has to do exactly what you want the baby to do, and you control everything about the baby. And then the baby starts to grow up, and then all of a sudden the baby is the baby is a teenager now, and you're now a coach because the kid has to do the stuff, but you're going to have influence and you're going to coach him a little bit, and you're telling him, right? And then the kid becomes an adult, and you're a fan, and you stay back, and you're right? So that's sort of the sports analogy journey.
How's your season going so far, Brad?
I'm a big fan, but
you're a fan now.
Like most fans, I'm curious all the time. I'll fire the current coach. But,
do you have a big finger?
Yeah, I've got a number one.
Yeah.
But the way that works out in the coach part, which is the important part, when you're a parent and when you're making choices, like let's say you're an actor. And the whole idea of being an actor is you make choices, right? You're following objectives. You want something, so you've got a bunch of choices. So how do you make a decision about what's a good choice and a bad choice? And it starts in life. How do you do that? And we've all made lots of mistakes, and we watch our children make lots of mistakes. And so my brother-in-law, actually, first, had sort of introduced me to this idea that it's all about risk and reward for kids. So you put everything into that matrix of risk and reward. So like your kid, your kid's like, smoking a lot of pot and wants to smoke pot before school. Okay, right? So that's a decision. Is that a good idea or not? So you can be a parent and say, you can't smoke pot before school. It's over. Fuck you. You're in trouble. You're grounded or whatever. You could do that. Or you could say, okay, let's step back from this. Take all the emotion out of it. You can smoke pot before school. Okay. What's the risk of that? Okay. It's illegal. So you could get caught. You could be jailed. It's against school rules, so you could get kicked out of school. It's against the rules of this house, so you might get in trouble from me. I might get mad at you about that. Your brain is growing, so it's maybe not great for your brain. It might be bad for your ambition. If you get caught and it goes on your permanent record of some kind, it could reflect in jobs or things down the line. And
boy, I would get high right away.
and then you say, what's the reward? You're a little high before school. Right. Come on. So you've removed you've just gone through what the actual thing is. And guess what? It always works. Sometimes the risk reward is tricky. It's like, okay, I want to ski off this cliff. That's really a risky thing to do. Well, how do I minimize those risks? I learn how to ski really well. I hire a guy that knows about avalanches. You go through these things and then you minimize the risks. But then the reward stays the same. And in fact, maybe it's even better because you know what you're doing.
Right. And as a parent, though, you're sort of Socrates in this, right? Because they're making that decision based on the evidence that you're discovering.
And then you have to let them do it.
And you have to let them do it.
Yeah,
now, just two more things, Brad, before Kenny's ridiculous game, and I have no idea what
you asked me to do a game.
No, I did, because I thought Brad would be fun. But this is the stuff I knew all the other stuff. That's what I wanted to hear. But you said something to me a year ago. We're having lunch, and it really hit me. Or right before COVID, when I was out there, you were talking about your love, which is surfing. And Brad goes to a corner of the world with great surf every year. And he said, I can only do my favorite thing probably 12 more times. And I'm thinking, well, no, you can do it as many times as you want. No, every year I get older, I do this once a year. Am I going to be surfing at 74? So there is this finite reality. Well, it lit a fire with me.
Yeah.
In terms of, now COVID has made it difficult.
Are you going to tell me surf's up now, Gary?
I'm surfing now. I have 12 opportunities to learn to surf. No, but the things that I want to do, the places I want to travel to, I can't just keep putting these things off.
Yeah, you got to do it.
I've got to do it.
When our kids were little, Julia did this, was so freaking smart. We had this moment. We realized our kids are about 5 years apart. So how long are they going to be in the house together? And how long are they going to do what we tell them to do as far as traveling goes? You maybe end of high school, maybe that's not so good. They don't do that anymore. So we only have this many years to take our kids to places that we want to go that we've never been. And so we made this list. And, man, we banged through that sucker. And it was expensive and it was hard. And the kids don't remember, specifically
you do.
Some of the early stuff. But boy, do we. And of course, it comes up, they do remember. And for me, I mean, Jesus, as we get to be ancient, I really like surfing, and I really like surfing.
My son's a big surfer.
Oh, yeah, well, you're out here, and so in order to keep doing that when you're of a certain age, like Gary is, you got to stay in shape. You got to do a lot but it's worth it. So it's a risk reward thing. How much reward is there going to be if you really, really, really
and the risk, sharks, of course. We have to bring this to an end. I know that we could wait till the sun comes up and share that experience together. But Ken, you have some sort of probably stupid game.
Well, we were talking about... We were talking about decisions that you have to make, those choices. Right. And there's a TV show on, and it's a moral question, whole thing. What would you do? Where they throw out a wallet, then they videotape to see if somebody would pick it up or not. Well, we're going to play somewhat of a variation on that. But I will tell you that every incident that I'm going to tell you about is absolutely true. It happened. And I'm going to ask you both, one, what would you do? And two, what do you think Kenny did?
Yes.
So I'm about to go through a doorway. On the other side, simultaneously, a person in a wheelchair and another person with a mother with a stroller is on the other side. If I step aside to the right, I allow the person in the wheelchair to go first. If I step to the left, it's the woman, the mom with the stroller. Who has the right of way?
Brad?
I would let the wheelchair person go through.
I would too.
Oh, why? You can't just, do you have any kind of reason why you made that decision?
Well, Brad was about to say.
Yeah. I would do that because I never liked that mother. And
yeah.
Okay.
No, because he's on the right on the other side of the door, therefore has the right.
So literally left, right of way is your thinking.
I know, he just said left, right at the end.
I just think that the greater obstacle to going through a door is going to be a wheelchair. The woman is inconvenienced, but the other issue seems to me to be of more gravity.
What do you think I did?
You let the woman through.
I think you
threw the guy out of the chair, you took it, and you went down the
Did I mention that the woman was hot?
Oh, you forgot that.
No, that was important, and you didn't mention it. So that's what you did?
Yeah, that's what I did.
All right, good. All right, next.
Was it a guy in a wheelchair, or it could have been a
big fat guy. Big fat guy.
Big fat guy? Okay.
That's fine. I'm just saying. No,
of course it's fine.
You just asked the question. I'm just telling you honestly.
Okay, it's fair enough. Give us another.
Okay. You're hungover. The night before, you got wasted with your friends and probably your son and whatever. You come down, you can hardly move. You just can make it to the couch, but the couch is covered with popcorn, pretzels, potato chips, tortilla chips, and a half a cookie. What do you do?
Do I go first this time?
Yeah.
It's been a long time, but I've been in it, and I know that I woke up with popcorn and pretzels on my body, so I just plopped down.
Okay.
Brad?
Yeah, there's no question that's exactly. Well, that's what you would do. Mm-hmm. I mean, whether or not that's the
right. Right.
You can do that.
Ken, that's what you did.
I'm talking about Gary.
No, that's not what I did.
You cleaned the couch?
I ate the popcorn, the cookie, the tortilla chip.
Now, see, I found that to be so far-fetched that I didn't even offer it as a possibility.
If the popcorn the next day, just because it's on the couch, and, I actually needed the nourishment because I was so hungover. So that was breakfast.
Fair enough.
Actually,
Let's do one more, Ken. One more.
You can't.
I know you've got millions.
No, I don't. I just have 4 more.
Okay.
They're going to be quick. I think you'll enjoy them.
I do enjoy it. I just, I've told you how busy Brad is. I know there are people outside of his office.
Brad can leave if he doesn't want to play the game. Brad, do you want to play the game?
I want to play the game.
Brad wants to stay and play the game. Okay. I go to pick up a pizza. I'm in the pizza place. I'm waiting for my pizza. In the meantime, I see a guy who is just putting, closing the box on a pizza, and he sneezes right into the pizza. And I'm like, holy shit. And he closes the box, and he turns around to hand it to the person who's waiting, who hadn't seen this. So you follow me here so far?
Yes.
I've seen him sneeze in the pizza box. I don't think anybody else has seen it but me. I don't know what to do. Do I tell the what do you
Brad?
do?
You purchase the pizza.
You buy the pizza from the person?
Yeah. You
Wow.
purchase the pizza.
And then what do you do with the pizza?
Then you eat the pizza. You get a terrible disease. And then you are motivated by the disease to go into medicine. You become one of the foremost epidemiologists in the United States of America.
That's exactly what I did.
Ken, I know for a fact that you didn't say a thing. I would have said something in this situation. My son makes pizza. I don't know if that gives me any credibility, but I would not be able to get my mind out of the fact that I just couldn't divorce myself of the fact that he's eating snot and pepperoni.
Do you think that in COVID, this is a fair...
Certainly during a COVID period.
This was pre-COVID.
I have to tell you, that pizza might have been sneezed on.
Here's what I did. I spoke up, and I said, he just sneezed in that pizza. And the owner turned around and said, no, he did not. And then the wife turned around and she said, get out of here. And then everybody started yelling at me, and I'm going, no, he did. Nobody ever did this. He did not see. Did anybody else see? And the person's like waiting to take the pizza, and they're screaming at me, and the guy says, get out and never come back here again. Get out, never come back here. And that's why, I had to go next door to Ralph's, and I explained to my wife why I brought home a roasted chicken as opposed to the pizza. So that's
I did not see that coming.
That's true.
Very good. I admire you.
The guy that sneezed, did the guy that sneezed deny it?
Oh,
he would have lost his job.
He did. He just turned around and just was like shaking his head, like, "Don't look at me." But that happened.
Well, that's quite a story.
Yeah.
Next.
Okay. Well, they're not over yet.
No.
You know that you go in to get a salad at a place. You just like there's a little place here. You walk in, you go to the counter. It's got a board up, and it's like they get the different salads. So I ordered the number 3, which is a tuna egg salad combination. So there's a kid on the other side. I say I'll have a number 3. The kid taps the iPad. Right? One time, just taps the iPad. Says, was that all? I said, yes. One tap. That's all he did. Then he turns the iPad around, and now the iPad is facing me. And for me to sign, and it says tip, 18%, 20%, 25%. And I'm like, wait, am I supposed to tip you because you just tapped it? All you did was you went like that, tap, and you won an 18%. And he said, sir, it's completely up to you. Do what you want to do. What would you do?
Let me go first here.
Go ahead.
In my life, in my past, I was a tightwad and famous for it. But I learned through the process of being me and then owning a restaurant a couple of times in my life that the tipping they're paid so little. Now, even though it's not really your responsibility to pay them, I now tip 20 to 25% on anything.
Yeah, but that's after you've been served. You're talking about...
Well, no, in any
service.
situation.
Okay.
In any situation, their tips are being considered as part of what this person declares as their income. And they need that income. And I figure they need it more than I need. I would have tipped at least 20%.
20%?
Given this, 20%.
One tap, 20%. Okay, Brad?
Yeah.
100% agree with Mr. Kroger. There should be the tip minimum wage is a big problem.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
that's
this was my thinking. My concern is what we've established now is giving the tip before the service. Am I right? Used to be you evaluate the service, you get the food, and then
to ensure prompt service.
Yeah, and then you go, hey, you know what,
It's
you did a good job, whatever. Okay, but now we're into this world of pre-tipping, which I don't.
Well, I think that's the thing, though. The tip is no longer. It's no longer related to the work.
Right.
Right.
The salary is so low.
It's the wage.
Okay.
It is the wage.
If you got a minimum wage, you got to tip 25%.
Yeah, you have to.
Well, you guys got a lot more progressive policy. I just basically thought to myself, is this going to affect the scoop of tuna that they're going to put on my salad? If this reduces, if it reduces, so I'm anticipating a lower amount of tuna because I get a free tip.
You know what? It's entirely possible. You know, I worked in the restaurant business, and I never allowed a server to take it. You know, you got what you got, but you'd see them come into the kitchen of, they're not going to tip me at all. You'd see, so things can happen.
Right,
you know,
I gave 18%.
All right. Well,
things can happen. I don't like hearing that.
I'll do one last one, guys.
All right.
And this one is actually took place in Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm. Is that where you are now, Brad?
I am.
I was on Main Street, and I was looking. Maybe I was just reading the menu on the restaurant, and I heard a noise. Oh, and there was a guy in a wheel. Oh, this is another wheelchair story. If you guys are okay with that. And there was a guy with a wheelchair, and he was trying to get in the door to open the door of the restaurant.
Was he a big heavy guy? Because we know how this is going to end.
No, but his thing was I don't know, he couldn't really communicate. And he was like, calling me over. So I went over.
This could end badly, Brad.
I went over, and I was like, okay, I guess he wants to get in the restaurant. So I opened the door, and I push him into the restaurant. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but I push him in the restaurant. And you know, people look, and they see me. He's standing there with the guy with the wheelchair. And he starts going, and pointing. And I'm not really sure where he's pointing, but I start to steer him towards this door, which I guess was the restroom, when suddenly the guy comes around from the restaurant, steps in front of us and says, "I'm sorry, sir. The restrooms are only for customers only. Are you a customer?"
Now, this is to the man in the wheelchair he's speaking to.
No,
or you.
To me, I am pushing the man in the wheelchair.
Okay.
The guy who works there, the waiter or whatever, walks over to me and says, "You cannot go any further." He assumes I am with the man in the wheelchair. Okay, so what's the question? What do you do now? The guy says you can't do this. What do you do? What do you do? You just like...
You try to explain. I mean, did you try to explain? And say, I'm just helping this gentleman here who had some trouble getting, he was outside. I'm assuming he's a regular, perhaps a fine customer that's here. Well, is that what you would have done, Brad? I think so, yeah. I mean, try to reason with the owner and the waiter. You, Gary? That makes sense. Is that a bad idea?
For sure, that would be the first thing that I would attempt to do, is that I was just helping out here, and then see where that goes. Now, if the answer to that is I don't care, I might pee right there. Well, it's not you who has to pee. Oh, he has to pee. He has. I got confused. He wants. I'm pushing a guy who I don't know, who's in a wheelchair. And he has to go to the bathroom. Which, yes, right. After I push him in, he wants me to take him to the bathroom. You know what? honest to God, I would reason, as Brad said, I would say, I'm sorry, we're going to the bathroom. And if you don't think that that's a good idea, there are going to be complications here that you're not going to like. I would be quasi-threatening.
I like that. I like seeing you in that mode.
Yeah.
Wow. What do you think?
I would pull my thing as I write a column for the paper, and this is not going to bode well for your business. And I really would. Hey, I think I won that one.
Well, it's not about it, but do you know what Kenny did?
What did Kenny do?
I turned and ran and never went back again, leaving the guy in the wheelchair with the people in the restaurant.
So what we're getting here are real life lessons.
Yeah. Well, listen, because what went through my head was, I am not going to push this guy in the wheelchair through into the bathroom. When is it going to end? I have to push him into the bathroom? Do I have to pick him up, unzip him so he can pee? There was no good way out. I am not going to take responsibility.
I'm wondering if there's a story that where the answer is where you would say, I turned and ran. Where did the moral thing sit?
Well, you know what? And now we have perfect bookends because you two hadn't met before. Brad, Ken, I'm sure you can see why I admire Brad so much. And Brad, I'm sure you can see why I get such a kick out of Kenny.
I think I'm going to make a little visit to Amazon and see if I turned and ran.
Brad, there's a premise. There's a premise. Every day he faces a guy in a wheelchair. What do I do?
I'm going to get the audiobook. I turned and ran.
Well, that's basically this is a perfect example of what we hoped the show would be: a little bit of wisdom, some stories, some fun inside information. We love when it's about show business. I personally love when it's personal aspects, as you shared, Brad, about your wife, your family, and students, and your children, and all that stuff. But like I've said, Brad has to go. You've got a lot of time on your hands. I have a life outside this door. We're going to go back to that reality now. You get taking a picture?
Yeah, take a picture. Everybody ready? There's a little picture of you nice stuff.
So I want to thank Brad Hall, our guest.
Thank you, Brad. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Mr. Grover.
And let me say thank you to our viewers. You catch us on, what are we on? iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, YouTube channel.
I'm on Flomax.
You're on Flomax. Few new shows, Buzzsprout, et cetera, The Gary and Kenny Show. Thanks for joining us. And gentlemen, it's been a slice.
Thanks,
Ken. Run away, Ken.
I turned and I ran.